this new system, then I think we as a country are going to have to legalize at least some group or subgroup of the undocumented immigrant population in the United States. Deportation, mass deportations just aren't going to be politically and economically feasible. It would cost billions of dollars to try to deport all the undocumented immigrants in the United States. It would disrupt our economy. It would disrupt communities. And I don't think that there's the political will to do that. So I think that what will happen in the next sort of stage of comprehensive immigration reform is that we will have some kind of legalization program, some kind of amnesty program. It may be one where people are forced to pay fines for entering unlawfully or staying unlawfully, that they may have some requirements imposed on them, like security checks and background checks. But I do think some kind of legalization program will come to pass. I also think that we will have continued debate on another part of immigration that could affect Mexico and Central America, and that is a possible guest worker program. The United States often in the past has had a guest worker program of some sort. We had what was called the Bracero program that was in place from World War II until the early 1960s. And this program permitted guest workers to come from Mexico and work primarily in agriculture in the United States and work for picking crops and things of that nature. There were good parts and there were bad parts about that guest worker program. One of the good parts was it allowed growers to get labor that they said was scarce. One of the bad parts was that some of the workers weren't paid the wages they were promised, didn't receive the benefits they were promised, and were exploited in certain ways. Now, when we talk about a possible guest worker program today, people suggest we need some help in agriculture in particular. Growers often clamor for guest worker programs. President Bush, who will soon be out of office, but over his terms, he supported guest worker programs of some sort. It seems to me that we will have a discussion as a nation about guest worker programs. And the big debate is sort of this, really. Can we have a guest worker program that protects labor rights? Can we have a program that brings people here temporarily while also ensuring that they're not exploited by employers like in past guest worker programs? Now, some people raise some other issues as well. Some people would say, how moral, how fair, how just is a guest worker program? Look, you take somebody's labor, you use their labor, then you tell them you're all done with them and make them leave. Is that a reasonable way and a fair way to act? Others would say, well, there's nothing more permanent than a guest worker. They say that kind of tongue-in-cheek, but they say it kind of seriously too. Because when you have workers who come, they are people, and they do things that people do, like they establish relationships, they may get married, they may join a church, they may create those community ties that make them decide, hey, I came here as a guest, and I wanted to come here temporarily, but I'm rethinking that. My wife is here now, she's a citizen, her family's here, or my girlfriend's here, or my church is here, my job is here. It's much harder once people establish those ties to say you're just a guest and throw them out than when they come and say I just want to be a guest. So I think that's sort of another objection to the guest worker programs. There will be, in a discussion of immigration reform, a discussion of guest workers, I believe. There will also be a discussion of a legalization. And there also will be a discussion of more border enforcement measures. One of the things that's very popular in the United States are measures that try to seal the border. Border fences, for example, are incredibly popular among the American voters. I don't think border fences are particularly effective at keeping people out. His presidential candidate, former presidential candidate Bill Richardson said, if you have a 12-foot fence, then people build 13-foot ladders. They are not particularly effective, but they are very popular among the American voters. I think other measures like increased Border Patrol officers, more technology for the border, things of that nature are likely to be embraced by the politicians and by the public in the United States. So we're likely to see something like that in immigration reform as well. Now, there's a lot sort of interesting going on in American politics currently. We have a presidential election coming up soon in November. We have the nominees look like they're going to be John McCain for the Republican Party and Barack Obama for the Democratic Party. Both of those candidates, I think, have been somewhat balanced when it comes to immigration reform, more so than some other political leaders in the United States. I think President Bush has talked extensively about immigration reform over a number of years, and I think that he's been a positive influence in our discussion of immigration reform. I don't agree with some of his policies on other issues, but I think when it comes to immigration, much of what he says makes good sense. He was supporting some kind of guest worker program. He was supporting some kind of legalization program. President Bush also supported some kind of increased enforcement. And I think that you'll see in the current presidential candidates, Senators Obama and McCain, some similar kinds of support for similar kinds of plans. I think that Senator Obama probably is a little bit more generous when it comes to the treatment of immigrants than candidate McCain, but I think they're both in the mainstream of the political parties in the United States at this point in time. And I do think that a new president, one of his priorities will be some kind of immigration reform. This has been a problem in the United States, a perceived problem that the federal government has failed to act, and state and local governments have begun to act on immigration, not always in the most constructive of ways. And so I think with a new president, a new Congress, a new set of political leaders for the entire United States, we're very likely to see some kind of immigration reform in the very, very near future.